Okay, everybody, part two. You didn't expect the two-parter. We're full of surprises over here at BMV, and we didn't even touch the meat of what we came here for on that first part of the podcast. So we're here doing part two, obviously. Now, the reason you're here, Luke, is because the full reason, the only reason why I invited you on was so you could talk about what you do, like in depth, and we didn't get to it. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So, let's get right to it. What is it specifically? We know you're a financial planner, but what really do you do for your clients?
If I summed it up in one word, I would say education.
Good.
I would say provide education. 2 words. Provide education.
Okay.
Because let me tell you this. I went to school for finance, and people always say to me, because I'm in financial planning, they're like, well, you went to school for this, you get it. And I will tell you that I didn't learn anything at the University of Missouri on how to invest or anything about financial planning. There are courses, I'm pretty sure, but you have to move heaven and earth to find them. They don't like you to take the courses. I think they're cheaper. They want you to go into the business school. In theory, it looks better, but I don't know. I would rather have the actual relative knowledge from my career path than have something that was better for everything on my resume, right?
Yeah.
But, I would say in one word, provide education, listen to people and provide education, because there's providing education. If people know nothing, then that's the way we go. And sometimes people have very specific needs, so the other side of that is just figuring out what people's goals are and building plans to help them achieve their goals.
Okay.
Right? And but I'm going to go with the provide education side of it today because it's more interesting because it applies to everybody.
Okay.
For the most part. And, unless we have a specific example, then the other side is obviously subjective to each person.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, one thing I want to tell you is that you've heard this phrase, well, the stock market averages 10% or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Something along those lines. People always say the market, in the long run, the stock market will average 10%. But what they're talking about when they're saying that average is they're talking about there could be one of two things, but most of the time they're talking about the arithmetic mean. So what that is adding up all the percentages and dividing it by the number of years in the time span. Okay. So you have 50% and negative 50%. What's the average?
0.
Yes. Okay. So if you have $100 and you make 50%, how much money do you have?
$150.
Mm-hmm. And then you lose 50%, how much money do you have?
100. Or you have 50 from 100, but you have 150. Or you have 100 from 150.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not, because I just realized I'm wrong. If you lost 50% from 150, you'd be at 75.
Right. So think about that for a second.
Uh-huh.
What was the first answer you gave me? Not to
100.
that question, to the first question.
The first
you said,
question.
What's the average? And you said?
You said 50. Oh, yeah, 0. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So what's the average, but how much money do you have?
Yeah, you lost 25 all day.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you see the problem.
Yeah.
So that's the arithmetic average. You're taking the percentages and dividing it by the number of years.
Okay.
It's wrong. Flatly speaking, it's misleading at best and a lie at worst. Mm-hmm. So if someone's saying we average this return, you know that's not an accurate number. If there's one negative number in the bunch, if they're all positive, it's accurate. If there's one negative number, it's wrong. If you have $100 and you lose 50%, and then you gain 50%, you're at 75, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So let me give you a real world example. If you take the S&P 500, so the top 500 stocks in the country, it's an index that people measure the stock market success by. It's the thing that you see on TV when people say the stock market's up. That's usually what they're talking about. If you take the average return from 2000 through 2020, it's 8.19%.
Okay.
If you take the real return, meaning if you invested $100 in 2000 and you pick a rate that would be the same every year to get you to the same spot that it is in actually right now, that number is 6.59%.
I'm getting in the weeds a little bit here.
So if you take the percentages and divide them by the number of years, like 50 plus 50 divided by 2, you get 8.19 in that example. From 2000 to 2020, real world stock market returns, the average return is 8.19.
Gotcha.
And the real return, meaning what I would have gotten if I would have invested $100 and left it there until today, is 6.59. Okay. So almost 2% difference.
Yeah. Doesn't make much
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a big difference. So the average return is always off in that regard.
Gotcha.
And that one's a big difference, right? It's 1.5%.
Absolutely.
So if you're using the average to plan for retirement, but you're off by 1.5%, you're done.
Yeah.
You do that wrong for 30 years, then you are going to work a lot longer than you had originally anticipated.
Yeah. And 30 years being, that's the number you're using as an average retirement.
No, I mean, if you save for 30 years,
Gotcha.
and you assume this average return in your plans.
Gotcha.
But the real return is 1.5%, 2% lower, you're going to end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars less money.
Holy crap. Okay, and this is happening to a lot of people, you think, all the time.
I know it is, because no one that I ever meet with, let me give you an example. I had a client, all the time I ask people, what is the most valuable thing that you got out of this meeting? And a lot of people say that. Simple example, add 50%, subtract 50%. I had a guy who worked at a bank who now works at a wealth management firm, who's one of my clients, who frequently says to me, no one at my firm knows about this stuff. This is a good feeling, actually. And
got a secret.
And the first time I met with him, that's what he said. And we're talking about a guy that literally does potentially more financial analysis than I do. And I'm talking about something that is, I would say, fairly simple, but unknown, right? That the average return of something is completely different than the actual return by a lot of times multiple percentage points. So the difference between in a real world example, the difference between the stock market's average return from 2000 to 2020 and the stock market's actual return from 2000 to 2020 is 1.5%. Yeah. So imagine making 1.5% less every single year than what you were promised for 21 years.
That's a big miss.
It's a big miss, but it has a lot of ramifications. If you do it for 30, 40 years, you're down hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're saving a lot of money.
That's crazy that people in the wealth management industry don't know something.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And so, I mean, you're kind of, what are you in? What is your industry?
It's wealth management, financial planning. Wealth management is like more specific.
Okay.
Wealth management, if you're only in wealth management, I would say is like a component of my business.
Okay.
So financial planning is like, what are we going to do for this life event? How do we plan for this life event? Wealth management is more like, how do we get the best return year to year?
Okay.
Sometimes. Or wealth management can be financial planning. They're pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
For all intents and purposes.
Gotcha.
I would say true wealth management, at least, should be like that. I mean, if you're just focusing on average returns and you're ignoring what the money was going to be used for, then I don't know. That's not a very smart wealth manager, I would say.
Okay.
But most are good. They know. People know. They're not dumb. People in my business, they're trained well. They know what they're doing. Gotcha. For the most part.
Nice.
Some of them.
And do you have to take a lot of tests to be one of these?
I mean, just basic, you need, I'm not going to go into it, but you need 3 tests. Yeah.
3 tests. Gotcha.
Yeah.
You see, they difficult?
It depends who you ask. Depends how good you are at taking tests.
Okay.
I think they have a pretty good pass rate, 70% maybe.
Okay. And do you deal with...
Take them as many times as you want.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Like an SAT.
Yeah.
Keep studying. Keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
Cool. Do you deal with, like, you're an all-encompassing financial planner, but do you deal with anything like other than a U.S. dollar? Can you do euros?
Well, we do international stock.
Yeah. Do you have to be a certain type of trained in that? Or
We do international stock funds usually to
What
cut
is
down
that?
on the difficulty of it.
Okay. Oh, I don't know what
It's basically you're investing in international markets, but it's in U.S. dollar.
Gotcha. Okay. So you don't move around euros.
Currency
For
stuff?
people, yeah.
Not really, no.
Okay. Interesting.
Not
Cool.
really. And most people don't want to.
Really? Like changing a U.S. dollar to a euro. You're saying?
Yeah, you have currency rate risk. You got all kinds of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't want it. I mean, when you get into trading and things like that some people do, that might come up. But most people, they want to plan for retirement. They want to plan for their kids' education. They want to save for a down payment on a house. They want to be rich. They want to stop working one day.
Yeah, I'm right there with that.
You know.
Yeah. So you don't put money into stocks for other people as well, or can you?
No, that's exactly what we
Gotcha. Okay, that's the international stock fund you're talking about.
Yeah.
With other stuff. So you're looking at the market too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what do you think about this? I don't. It's completely speculative. I understand, but what do you think about the real estate market in its state today?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a bubble because bubbles are usually caused by an influx of supply. So, for example, a bubble might be caused in a currency like the dollar by printing too much money. That might cause a bubble. That makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It pops, you lose money.
Mm-hmm.
The value goes down. So that's an oversupply that causes inflation a lot of times.
Okay.
In this real estate market, there's an undersupply. The reason housing prices are high is because you can't buy a house. The demand is there. People want to buy houses. What do you say?
Oh yeah.
They want to buy houses. That's why the prices are going up. They're cooling down a little bit now, but that's why the price, not because of 2008 when there was an oversupply of loans being made.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That causes housing prices to go up too. But that's the bubble because there's an oversupply of mortgages.
Gotcha. But this is more of
This is just straight up economics.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. You increase the demand, but the supply is the same. You're going to have increases in price.
For sure.
So that's what's going on right now. And also, it's very cheap to buy a house from a borrowing standpoint. It's not cheap from a price standpoint, but let me give you an example. I have a friend, one of my clients and good friends of mine. He bought a house on the East Coast in South Carolina for he's on the East Coast. I don't remember what state he's in. But he bought a house for about $300,000, and I think his mortgage payment is under $2,000.
Okay. Jeez.
And his rate is under 3%. I think it's around 2%. Wow. So if that rate is low, then your payment's lower, right?
Yeah.
And so it's cheaper to buy a house, relatively speaking, in the sense that your mortgage payment is lower.
Yeah.
So if your interest rate is lower, your mortgage payment is lower, so it's cheaper to buy a house in that way. At the same time, the prices are really high.
Gotcha.
So people are wanting to buy because you can live in a house now for a lower mortgage payment than you have really any other time in history.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
That also has something to do with it, then I would assume.
So everyone wants to buy. No one is really selling too much because the prices are going up. I don't know why people aren't selling exactly. I don't.
Yeah.
It's not really my area of expertise, but I know why. That's why the price is going up and it's not. I don't think it's a bubble. I mean, that's not really what a bubble is. A bubble is an influx of supply, too much supply.
Yeah.
This is not that.
Okay.
So
I was just reading yesterday.
But we might have a crash. I don't know. It's possible. I have no idea, but I doubt it.
Well, I'm not sure anybody's going to hold you to, your real estate expertise. Purely opinion, everybody. Purely opinion, based off of our little understanding of economics. You have much more understanding of economics than I do, but if somebody comes at you with a pitchfork, I'll be the first one to defend you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll need you.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're coming eventually.
Yeah, dude. So I was reading something yesterday about a lot of housing units are going to demolition because it is cheaper for landlords to demolish versus refurbish, right? And so this article is basically stating that it's destroying the low income housing availability for those in the inner city that need, the place to get on the bus route. It's low income housing. It's not a huge at Tulane.
So you're saying that the rent will now be more expensive because they bulldozed it and rebuilt it, and so
no. What's happening is they're demolishing the unit, the building entirely,
and building a different kind of housing.
They're not even building.
Oh,
they're not building. Yeah, that's the.
Why
issue.
are they demolishing it?
Because it's cheaper to just get rid of
it.
it. Yeah, it's cheaper to get rid of it than it is to actually build it back up, and so it's getting rid of a lot of low income housing opportunities, availability. So I feel like. I don't know why I brought that up, to be honest with you, but it was real estate, and I read about it yesterday, so I wanted to bring it up because I would like to talk to her as well. There's a woman who's like spearheading the studies on why exactly it's happening, why people are getting basically pushed out of low, units. Oftentimes low income. Low income renting tenants are getting pushed out, and it's just interesting. I hadn't heard of anything like that until I read this article. I'm starting to really love KCUR. You got a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, like in Kansas City. Whole bunch of articles about topics I've never heard of. You know what I mean? I've never even thought to think about. It's just allowing me to think a little bit more about this stuff. But I'm kind of ranting now. But let's get back to your work, man. So, so anybody can get in contact with you. What is like your?
Can I put my phone number up there? Or
absolutely, I definitely should do that
for the people.
For the people, baby.
So last time at the end of the part 1 episode, I said something along the lines of, typically you can take out 4 or 5% of your retirement plan every year and be pretty sure you won't run out of money. And we help people get to 10%. So that means instead of taking out only 4 or 5%, you're able to take out 10% of your 401k or Roth IRA or wherever you're putting money in your retirement plan safely. So obviously people probably like, how does that happen? And the answer is because the reason you can only take out 4 or 5% is something called sequence of returns risk. I think maybe I brought it up last time, I don't remember. But sequence of returns risk is this. You don't know. It's true that the stock market's long-term return is 10%. Not average, real return, 10%. However, there are periods of time when there are abysmal returns. Okay, and there are periods of time of great returns. Now, what's more important to you? The long-term return or what the market does when you retire?
What it does when I retire, for sure.
Exactly. So it doesn't really matter that over the 30-year retirement you have, it might be 10%. If it's terrible the first 10 years, you're still going to run out of money.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. So from 2010 to 2019, what do you think the actual return of the S&P 500 was?
Oh man.
2010, or 2010, 2019.
7.
13.5.
Okay.
So if you invested $1 in 2010, you would have $3.57 today. If you invested $100 in 2010, at the end of 2019, you'd have $3 or $357.
Gotcha.
100 to 357.
Okay.
But if you invested the same $100 in 2000 and you waited 10 years to 2009, if you invested $100 in 2000, how much money do you think you'd have in 2009?
Definitely less than that.
So if you invested $100 in 2000, you would have $91 in 2009. The average return was, or the real return, let's check this out. So the average return was 1.21%. The real return, negative 1%.
It's jacked up.
This is a really good example of average versus actual returns. One is positive and one is literally negative.
Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat this because this is pretty wild actually. If you invested $100 in 2000 and then you waited to 2009, you would average 1.21%.
Okay.
But your $100 would have gone down to $91.
So that average return means nothing.
It means nothing. It's misleading, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the real return was negative 1%.
Uh-huh.
And that's because just like if you add 50% and subtract 50%, your average is 0, but you have less money than what you started with. So in this case,
it's nuts.
Basically, here, I'll just read, let me just do this. I'll read the returns, okay? 2000, I'll just go in order. -9, -11, -22. That right there is brutal. People don't really remember that 2000 and 2002 that's a negative 50% drop. -9, -12, it's actually 11.9 now, we'll call it 12. -9, -12, -22. Okay? Then 28, 10, 5, 16, 5%, negative 37% in 2008, and 27% in 2009.
Wow. Okay.
So, but the next 10 years were great. So, this is a great way if you are in your 20s and 30s to save for retirement, the stock market. You have a long time, and any 30-year period is a good growth rate. It is. It just is. But you need that much time. But once you're in your 50s, all you care about is what it's going to be like on the day you retire. Right? So you have to think in advance of when you get that far, because the only way to beat the sequence of returns, risk, meaning which one of those are you going to be? Are you going to be 2000 to 2009 when the market returned negative 1% every year, annualized? Or are you going to be 2010 to 2009, 2010 to 2019, where you got 13.5% annualized? Annualized means basically what you would get every year to accumulate that much money that it actually accumulated to. Because it's not the same rate every year, we know that. Okay. But annualized means if you picked one number and got to the same place, this would be that number that it would increase by every year.
Okay.
So you can have -1 or you can have 13.5, but you don't know which one you're going to be. And if you land on the wrong one, you didn't do anything wrong. You might have diligently saved. But again, what's more important? What the market does in the long term, or where the market is on the day you retire?
Every day.
Right? If you retire in 2000 and then you take out money every year, but you lose the first year 9%, the second year 12%, the third year 22%, and you're pulling money out every year. I mean, how long is your money going to last if the first 10 years of your retirement you have no growth and you in fact lost money?
Yeah.
And you're pulling money out every year.
Oh, you're screwed.
Now, what if you're assuming an average return of 10%? Because that's what people told you.
Yeah.
So you decide you can take out 6%. You're like, well, I average 10 throughout my portfolio, so I'll take out 6. That gives me a buffer of 4. You're for sure running out of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're for sure running out of money, because that's not the way math works. Math is not money, and money is not math. Even though people think it is, it's not. It's not the way it works. Basically, if you get unlucky, or you have bad advice, but in this case, if you just get unlucky, you're going to run out of money, right? So
what's the remedy for that?
So the remedy is this. You must have something in place where you can, number 1, you have no risk. Number 2, you have a competitive return. Number 3, fully funded by the time you retire. And number 4, that is tax-free. You have to have something that meets those 4 qualifications to withdraw money out of by the time you retire. And you need to be able to withdraw money from that whenever you have negative years, the first 10 years of your retirement.
Gotcha. You're hedging your bet, essentially, huh?
You're more than hedging your bet, because you know that at some point you're going to have a negative year.
Okay.
It's very likely the first 10 years you're going to have some negative years in there, right?
Yeah.
You don't know if you're going to have 1 or 5. 2000 or 4. 2000 2009 had 4. 2010 to 2019 had 1, and it was -4. So it's minuscule. But you don't know which one you're going to be.
Yeah.
And if you just place your bet on retiring at a time that's similar to 2010 to 2019 instead of 2000 to 2009, well, you're really rolling the dice.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is you have that, what I call a volatility shield in place, and you withdraw money from that. But remember, it has to be no risk, competitive returns, tax-free, and fully funded by the time you retire. To draw money from on the down years when your retirement account is down.
Gotcha. Yeah.
If you have that, you can take out 10% from your retirement.
Oh, okay.
So I will not reveal the volatility shield on the podcast
Okay.
or how it works, because it's very intricate for the most part. It's not that intricate, but it's kind of intricate. And it's for another, it's more personalized, and it depends on each person and how it works for that.
Okay. So they just need to give you a call and figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You really got some secrets on you, man. You got some monetary secrets that the people need to hear.
I think so.
Awesome.
The reason I stayed in this for so long was because I thought people needed to hear this information.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to people, they're like, why isn't everybody doing this? Everyone who understands it does do it, for the most part. Mm-hmm. Some people are hard-headed and they don't get it, but most people do.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do need to let y'all know, I was a client of Luke's at one point. It fell through because I had moved to Milwaukee and kind of haven't picked it back up yet, but I do intend to come back because
good.
I know exactly. I know what you're doing. We've talked about it many times, and I understand it. But it's a matter of I need to get my financial ducks in a row. Right. Lately, I've really been getting very astute with my money. Like I'm understanding the game a little bit more day by day, and I'm developing a savings account, which has been so much fun to watch grow. And then once I have that savings account where it needs to be, which will be pretty soon, I'm stoked about.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's going to be diversifying into what you do. You know what I mean? Then it's actually going to be, all right, I'm good to go with my savings. I don't need to worry about nothing. Now I can start to make my money grow in other ways. So I'm going to hit you up at some point. You'll definitely be hearing from me.
Good. You got my number. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to let the people know about before?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. Are you trying to wrap up?
Well, it's. I don't know what else you would. You like people to understand about what you do, without because you said it was a little bit more personal. That volatility shield is a little bit more personal conversation.
So I'll be done with that, but I do have something very interesting. I was meeting with one of my friends and clients the other day, and he's also Ukrainian, but he moved here in 2000 when he was about 40. And he moved here with his newborn daughter and 12-year-old son and his wife. So he got here in something called the lottery. So they did this thing for other countries then. I don't know if they do it now or not, but basically you would apply for, they would take a certain amount of people from every country. And his secretary, or not his secretary, something like his secretary or a receptionist he worked with or something like that, did it every year. She's like, I've been doing it for 20 years or 10 years or whatever it was. And she's like, you need to do this too. And she's like, I'll even fill out the paperwork for you. And he was like, all right, whatever, fill it out for me. And he won. So we moved his family to the U.S. and that secretary must have been losing her mind. I actually think it's rigged because he was a professor. And I think they just kind of picked people that are, they just picked people that were, that they wanted to come into the country.
Wow.
But they wanted the appearance of being fair. I have a feeling that's what they did. That sounds like something the United States would do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The 1 year he applies after 30 years of
yeah, I know, right? It's a great story. But anyway, what I was going to say is he was telling me how it is so crazy for people who grew up in the Soviet Union to even conceive of something like financial planning because everything was done. You go to work, you get cash. No bank, no stocks, no investments. It doesn't exist. No financial system.
Okay.
No loans, no financial system. You go, your housing is arranged for you, you go, you work, you have money, you work for 40 years, and the government gives you a pension, which is a little bit less than what you made. It's all a very small amount of money. It's like nothing. And that was the Soviet Union. So that ended in 1990, and then he came here in 2000. In the end of 1990, 1991, Soviet Union fell apart. But what I wanted to say was this, because you asked me last time about being Ukrainian and stuff, growing up Ukrainian, and half Ukrainian, half American, and I was telling him about this podcast that we did, and we were talking about how when he first moved here, someone reached out to him and they were like, well, you should meet with this financial advisor. And he's like, financial advisor? Like, what do I need what are you talking about? Like, I go to work, they pay me, and then that's it. And then I spend the money. I go to work, they pay me, I spend the money. What's a financial advisor for? What could they possibly do for me? And it's interesting, and because the rest of it to him is just money manipulation. He's like, I don't even know what that, and this is everybody in the Soviet Union. It would be unfathomable for them to come here, I assume most people, and then have like this thrown at you. It's almost like you were on a different planet, right?
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but my mom is kind of that way. My mom is not, she still has that like itch of like not being, like she's good with money, but it is like limited. It's like it was a new language she had to learn basically, and she learned it well. But it's like you don't really think we have finance classes and stuff in high school, right? You have math and finance classes and stuff. That's a different world to people that grew up in the Soviet Union. I just thought because we were talking about that last time, and I met with this guy, and it was like fate almost, right? I met with him just to review. And we started talking about this stuff, and then with the podcast and whatnot. And he was telling me about how crazy the concept of investing is to somebody who grew up without a financial system. It's like money manipulation. It's like magic, right? It's like fake. They're like, this is impossible. When they first learned, they're like, this isn't real. This is impossible. How does the money grow without? How can the money possibly grow without you putting more money in there? That doesn't make any sense. Like the idea of an interest rate is bonkers.
Oh, shit. I mean, the whole financial system.
Full financial system. You go, you make money, you spend the money.
Yeah.
There's nothing left over.
That's their financial system.
There's no bank. There was no banks.
Wow.
Nothing. There's nothing like that.
Okay. Damn.
So
and that's a whole not half of the world, but that's a whole big part of the world. People, is it important? Like, what are they doing up there? Do you have any idea what they're doing up there in Soviet or in Russia now, Ukraine? Like, or have they come?
It's not like that now. This ended 30 years ago.
Gotcha.
So my friend, he's 60,
so when he first
he's 60
came
now.
up, you're saying
he
when
came
he
here when he
first
was
came,
40, right? And Ukraine had a period from about 1991 to 2000 that was pretty brutal. Lots of inflation. And it was very difficult to set up a financial system when you have nothing in place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, how do you even do that? How do you make a currency? And how do you get people to accept a currency that wasn't there before? You're like, I'm going to give you this paper, and now you're going to use this as a way to buy your food for your kids.
Yeah.
And you better take it.
It's just a bonkers concept.
And so there was a lot of inflation and stuff. The guy that actually set up the currency, that created the currency, my mom knows him decently well. He became president in 2004,
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
That's awesome.
And he was like a monetary genius, like a genius at being an economist.
Okay.
I mean, he set the currency up, like he the hryvnia, right? He like created it, and then was like, you people accept this as the new Ukrainian currency. It's still the currency.
How do you know how long it took for it to become like?
I think they instituted it, and that was, and it stuck.
Okay.
I mean, you probably had significant inflation, and they always have. Ukraine always has trouble with inflation, but just for various reasons. But I think it was really bad in the beginning. It was mostly a barter economy in the early '90s, late '90s. I think it was '96 that the hryvnia was 96, maybe 95. I don't know. Sometime around when I was born, it was instituted, and it stuck. I mean, it's still the currency today. So
Nice. So I wanted to ask you this: how important is history, financial history, in learning today's economy? Like, how much value do you put in learning the history of the dollar?
oh my gosh, this is like a 10 podcast
Oh shit!
question. Well, let's repeat the question.
I just want to know how much you value learning the history of our currency.
I think there's a tremendous amount of value, but it's so complicated and there's so much. Let me answer it in this way. I think it's extremely important for it to be known. I think it's extremely important for it to be understood by people who make decisions.
Okay. In terms of
Will it affect
politicians or like bosses in a company?
Yeah, that's good. I would say anybody that makes important decisions in the country in terms of what route we're going to take, this way or that way, they need to understand. They need to understand the role of money, how it works, and what mistakes have been made in the past in regards to the management of the money supply of the country. If that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They need to understand what mistakes were made and how not to do them again, because if you don't, then we're like on the precipice of this right now, potentially. You have more and more people saying that this inflation is not just pandemic related, it's more than that. You have other issues. It's because we'll just think about this. I mean, let me tell you a fact, and I'll see your reaction to it. 40% of all the money in circulation was created in the last year and a half.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
So what do you think is going to happen?
Price is going to jack up.
So
the dollar's not worth as much.
Right. Was it necessary? I don't know. That part's up for debate. But what's done is done.
Yeah.
And we gotta live with that. And the longer people don't, or the people making decisions. So maybe the central bankers, the Federal Reserve, the central bank. If people ignore that reality, or what I think is probably a reality, I'd give it certainly over 60% chance that this is not pandemic inflation, or maybe part of it is, but I'd say over probably 50% of the increase in prices is possibly due to money manipulation and not pandemic related issues. Maybe it's 50-50. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Maybe it's less than 50, but certainly a significant portion of it is from money manipulation. And if you don't recognize that, if people making decisions don't recognize that, and if they don't look at what has happened in the past when governments have manipulated currencies in the way that they're doing, I'm basically making up fancy words for money printing, but it's not exactly the same as money printing. It may have the same effect, but we don't know yet, but it probably will have a similar effect, but the extent of it is not known. But anyway, this is why I said this is a hard question. I'm trying to sum it up, but I think it's very important for people making decisions to understand this so they don't do it again, right? So we've had 5 central banks in the U.S. This Federal Reserve is the 5th central bank. Maybe 4th. I don't remember. It's 4th or 5th. There were 3 central banks, and they always printed money, and they always caused inflation, and they were ended.
Okay.
Every time. The first was to raise money for the Continental Army. The second one was after the country was founded. The third one, I believe, was after that, and I think Andrew Jackson basically went to war with the central bank's president and won.
Wow.
And so he was gone. He caused a recession. I think he threw him in jail eventually because he purposely caused a recession to make it look like Andrew Jackson's fault.
Wow.
So there's a great book called The Creature of Jekyll Island, which talks about the Fed. As you can imagine, it's not the most favorable look at the Federal Reserve. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Okay.
Great book, though. One of my favorite books I've ever read.
Okay.
And so the Federal Reserve is the 4th central bank that the U.S. has had. That was started in 1913. And their stated goal is to regulate the money supply so that if you have inflation, they calm it down. And then if you have low economic growth, they stimulate it. That's their stated goal.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Gotcha.
But if you have inflation and they're chalking it up to things that maybe are now less than 50% of the cause, then you're not going to fix the root of the problem.
Yeah, that's really
It makes sense, right?
Absolutely, it does.
And yeah,
my whole thing, I see a lot online of people complaining about the inflation, which I mean it sucks, but it's kind of like it's inevitable, right? Like, is it not inevitable because I saw a stat that said that every dollar today is worth like 2 cents compared to the dollar in 1913, something like that. You take us back 100 years and the dollar's worth nothing compared to that dollar. Right? I mean, is it not inevitable that why is it a shock?
1913? Is that what you said?
I think it was 1913. I could be wrong on that year. It's been a while since I've seen that stat, but it was around that period of time where they compared the value of the $2, and but the point of that is it not an inevitability that this was going to happen?
I don't know. I'm qualified to answer that. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people think that the Federal Reserve is the reason that we have this sort of inflation, but it's hard to say, man. I mean, the changes in our lives and the system we live in from 1913 to now. By the way, 1913 is when the Federal Reserve was founded. That's why I was like, is that the year you said?
I think
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think that is.
But the changes in our system is unimaginable, right? If you took someone from 1913, put them in a time machine and brought them here, they would not, or 1910, they would not. It would be impossible for them to fathom.
Yeah.
So could we have had this massive, massive increase in quality of life without this banking system that was created? I don't know, because most of the increase in quality of life was from technology, right? Would that have been possible without the tremendous amount of money that was loaned into existence? I don't know. I really don't know. I read that book and I was like, I get it that the case is made fairly well that the Federal Reserve causes a lot of problems, but I'm not so sure that benefits don't outweigh the problems of whatever we've already done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe. I know for sure, I don't. But it seems to be the case that if you are not careful with these kinds of things, they will ruin your currency, for sure.
Based off what?
Well, history, like you said, financial history. That's how we got onto this answer, right? You said, how important is financial history? And I said, as soon as you asked that question, I was like, oh, this is going to take a while. But, you know,
is there like a country you can point to though?
Well, every country that has printed lots of money, and there's a little bit of a distinction because they literally printed money and handed it out to people.
Wild.
So obviously that's going to create problems. Our way of printing money is, I'm going to try to explain this as simply as possible. So when people talk about government debt, what they're talking about, the government owes, $29 trillion. When people say that, what they mean is the total number of outstanding government bonds on the market is $29 trillion. So, but you and I can own a bond, anyone can own a bond, right? You can go out and buy it on the open market, you can trade government bonds, you can go buy a government bond. That's government debt, right? It's not, China only owns I think 1 or 2 trillion. So people that say China owns our debt can get out of here. That's not true. They have a small percentage of it and they do it as an investment. Our government debt is an investment, right?
So strange to me.
Yeah, but that's what is considered the safest investment is U.S. government debt.
Okay. You're investing in the fact we're going to be in debt. Is that?
You're loaning the U.S. money essentially.
Okay.
They've never defaulted.
It's true.
So people assume they will never default because why wouldn't they ever default? They can just make more money.
That's rigged. That does not sound like a good system.
Yeah, no shit.
Does not sound like a good system.
No shit. But anyway, so that's essentially where money comes from, right? We live in a system where money is loaned into existence, and then so then the Federal Reserve, if you need more money in circulation and you need to juice the economy theoretically, they will use what are called open market operations and purchase that government debt on the open market. And then that money comes from, that's conjured money, right? So they created that money to purchase that government debt. They also buy mortgage-backed securities, it has the same effect. So they use money that was created out of nothing to buy this debt, right? And then that money is, in theory, circulated throughout the financial system in the country, and then that gives everybody a little bit more money.
Okay.
Of course, it does sound like that would cause inflation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think, I forget the exact number, but I think I know what it's close to. What do you think, how much, let me ask you a question. What do you think, okay, so the total U.S. government debt is $29 trillion.
Okay.
How much of that do you think is owned by the Federal Reserve? Actually, I don't know that exact answer, but let me ask you this. How much debt or how much money do you think the Federal Reserve, what is the value of all the assets do you think that our central bank, the Federal Reserve, has purchased so far?
What's the value out of the 29 trillion?
I'm not exactly sure what that number is, but it's more than 50% of the number I'm about to give you. Meaning, what is the total amount of money printed, parentheses, by the Federal Reserve? Really, it started, this is since 2008, right? Because it was under 1 trillion at that time, and now it's about 10 trillion.
Fuck.
Yeah. So, most of that is government debt. So, this is the point. A lot of government, let's say it's 7 trillion. I'm not exactly sure. We could probably look it up. I looked it up a while ago and I forgot. But let's say 7 trillion of U.S. government debt is owned by the Federal Reserve. Is that crazy, right? Because they bought that money they bought that debt, right?
Yeah.
With money that was conjured out of nothing and then sent through the system.
Yeah.
And that debt that they own is never going to be paid. It expires. If they want to take money out of the system, the debt expires and they just sort of get rid of it.
But you're fucking my mind up right now, bro.
Well, it's
very
supposed
complex
to.
to me.
It's very complex. It's meant to be complex so that people don't look into it and understand it. That's one of the points of the Creature of Jekyll Island is they're talking about, they're like, the system is set up in a very convoluted way on purpose so that people will just be like, fuck this, bro.
Yeah.
I got kids. I don't need to listen to this. I don't need to worry about this bullshit.
It's a lot to. So
I gotta go to work.
Which makes you very, very valuable, and that you're putting in the work to learn all that.
Well, I like learning about it.
Uh-huh.
I don't think most people do, and I don't even think most people need to be honest with you. I don't know how much. Sometimes I wonder if I should just not even worry about this, because what am I gonna do? You know, I mean, I only listen, figure it out because it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
It seems a little devious, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, it sounds like you know more than the average, you know, than the layman. But I think you feel a need. I think you fulfill a need in people's lives, especially with something as important as, you know, financial literacy. Mm-hmm. You're that buffer for understanding. Mm-hmm. I'm really glad you got on this podcast, because I think at least one person is going to hit you up and want to take their financial lives into their own hands, you know.
Hopefully.
Take a little more power into it. Because I'll tell you what, when I hit you up that first time, that was like my first, you know, introduction into thinking for the future. You know, other than that, it was just like I was in the Soviet Union. I got paid, I spent it, dude. Like, really. And, it was fun, but there was nothing to show for it. Because, you know me, I've started over 3 or 4 times now. I just left everything 3 or 4 times. Like, everything I had bought with that money I didn't have. You know?
Yeah, I remember.
And so it's super important. I feel very empowered now that I've taken it much more. I've just taken it much more seriously. It's an empowering thing. You know, you feel safe.
Yeah.
You know? I think a lot of people are not feeling safe. And how could you if, like, the moment your car breaks down, you have no way to fix it, and you have to go to work, but you can't get to work now. That's a stress on people's lives that just hangs over their head. So that financial literacy is something you can provide for them, and I think that's really awesome. I think that's really good.
Yeah, I do my best.
So humble, man. Cool, dude. Well, you good?
Yeah, it was great.
Wrap it up.
Sure, it was great.
Awesome, man.
Let's go to the peanut.
I'm so down. I'm hungry.
All
right, y'all. So you got it. This is part 2. I hope y'all had a good time listening in, and please give Luke a shout out. Call him 816-785-7333. Find him on Facebook. Get a hold of him if you want to take charge of your financial lives. It's really important, I think, and I'm sure you probably agree as well. If you want to check out, I'm wearing the Be More hoodie right now. It's the BMKC.Hoodie. You can find that on BeMoreVentures.org. And you can also find the BMV.Tee on there. And you can also find every other piece of content we got going on that website as well. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.